Hi everyone, so as you can see, I'm finally back from Japan. Well, actually I've been back for almost 3 weeks now. And I kind of wanted to just make a quick video as to why it's taken me 3 weeks to kind of get back into making YouTube videos. So first up, I just wanted to quickly mention that the trip to Japan was absolutely incredible. I got the chance to see so many amazing places. In total, I think we ended up visiting about 10 different prefectures while we were in Japan. And I filmed so much and took so many photos. I have so much footage to sort through that it's just insane. And that's actually one of the reasons why I decided to take a short break from YouTube after we got back, just to have a little bit of time for myself. Now, there's actually a few other reasons that contributed to me wanting to take just a short little break from YouTube before getting back into it. Now, one of those reasons, other than just having a little bit of free time to myself, as I mentioned, was having a little bit of time to kind of get myself back into a routine. Now, that actually ended up taking a little bit longer than I expected because I ended up getting a bit sick when we got back to Melbourne. Actually, the whole return flight itself was just really stressful. So I didn't end up sleeping for about 35 hours straight, and that's just because we had the flight from Osaka to Hong Kong airport where we had a 7-hour layover, and then from Hong Kong to Melbourne where we arrived in the morning and then pretty much didn't sleep until later that night. So the whole thing combined was easily over 35 hours without any sleep, which is probably one of the reasons why I ended up getting sick, which I believe it was just a common cold that I may have picked up on the plane. So with getting sick and also coming from the nice, comfortable, cool late autumn, early winter weather in Japan to the very uncomfortable 30 to 40 degrees Celsius weather here in Melbourne, it was just very uncomfortable. I am definitely a cold weather person. I do not like the heat at all. So with that, and also having to return back to my stressful job, it just kind of all had a compounding effect on my motivation. One of the other reasons that I decided to take a little bit of a break is, as I mentioned, I have a lot of footage to sort through. Like literally hundreds of gigabytes worth of video footage to sort through for my Japan travel videos. Some of which I must say I have been somewhat dreading to actually look back through. So this is largely because when filming outdoors with a camera, it's very, very different from when you're filming outdoors with a phone. A phone is very, very good at sort of picking up bright backgrounds and sort of balancing the exposure, in my opinion. Whereas cameras, or at least the Sony ZV-E10, is not very good at that. It is very, very easy to overexpose your footage if you're not careful, especially when you're changing from a darker environment like, you know, a cafe or something like that and coming outside. And that's actually one of the reasons why I ended up getting one of these variable ND filters from K&F Concept. So full disclosure, this is probably one of the cheapest variable ND filters that I was able to find. And also, I'm not very experienced when it comes to filming outdoors or using variable ND filters. So all of that, coupled with some probably not so great advice on settings to use for filming on the Sony ZV-E10, kind of made me dread having to look back through some of the earlier footage for my Japan trip, where I feel like I may have made a couple of mistakes possibly. When it comes to the not so great advice that I was referring to when filming with the ZV-E10 is that one thing that I'm very aware of with the Sony ZV-E10 is that the battery life is not great. And one tip that I heard to help improve the overall time that you can film on the Sony ZV-E10 is by setting the display screen's brightness down to the lowest. Now, by doing that though, when you're filming outside where it's bright, it basically means that for the first few days, I was essentially filming blind. Like when I was outside, it was so bright and the screen was so dark, I virtually couldn't see what I was filming. So I was kind of just hoping for the best. Which, in hindsight, I highly do not recommend that you do, for obvious reasons. So I stopped doing that once I noticed one thing about this variable ND filter that I noticed by chance. The reason why I say I noticed it by chance is because I had this variable ND filter on my camera when I was indoors in a dark room, and that's when I noticed this one thing, which is kind of a big issue. So with this variable ND filter, you can see here on the side that there is the strength of the filter itself. So the one thing that I didn't notice though when I was originally using it, because I was shooting blind, is that when you kind of go from this end dot here to max, it actually has an effect on the filter itself. So basically, when it moves from that dot to max, it created these really dark sort of curvy lines across like the screen, kind of in this shape, like on the top and bottom corner on either side, there was kind of like a dark circle that I could see. Now, I don't think when I was actually using the filter outside that I ever really turned it to max, but after doing it in the room by chance, I kind of have been dreading looking back over those first maybe 3 days worth of footage where I was outside, just in case I did do that, because obviously that could have potentially ruined some of the footage, and I really hope that it didn't. But yeah, that's kind of the reason why I've been dreading looking back over that portion of the footage. One other small issue I had on the very first day when filming is shooting in aperture priority on the Sony ZV-E10, which is something that I'd seen recommended in a YouTube guide, and that's why I tried it out, because it's apparently meant to be good for vlogging, or at least that's what this video said. What I didn't know, because it wasn't mentioned in that video, is that when you go into a low light room, the aperture priority has a huge impact on the shutter speed. It will decrease the shutter speed so fast, and it creates this really bad stutter or lag effect. Now, luckily, because it was in a low light room, I was able to see the screen, and I picked up on that very quickly, and I stopped using aperture priority from that point onwards. Another reason why I've been putting off going over my footage from Japan is because during the trip, my father-in-law actually gave me one of these Insta360 cameras. Now, this is a great little camera. I used it for a couple of days on the trip, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I put off going over the footage, because I know those 2 particular days where I was using this camera is gonna take a little bit of extra effort to go through all of the footage and edit it, because it's gonna take a little bit for me to actually learn how to properly edit videos using the 360 camera. So I'm gonna have to kind of teach myself as I go for those days. Now, on top of all of that, I'm still also kind of brainstorming how it is that I actually want to edit these videos from Japan. I've kind of been bouncing back and forth on the idea of whether or not I want to edit these as shorter day-by-day sort of videos while I was in Japan, or if I want to edit them as longer videos where it's more from location to location sort of style. So if I do it day by day, then obviously I'll be able to get more videos out of it, but I feel like location by location would be better, because there'd just be a bit more quality to each video, even though there would be less of them. Now, the very last reason why I took an extended break is because before we actually left for Japan, I was working on the sort of initial stages of this really big project that I've kind of created for myself. Now, I really don't like stopping partway through something. And the reason for that is because I have such a bad memory that it makes it really hard for me to pick up where I left off. And so because of that, I wanted to go over that project a little bit step by step, go over everything that I had sort of written down for it so as I could sort of refamiliarize myself with it. Now, that is a project that will come up much later on. I'm still only in the initial phases, definitely not near the stages of being able to actually talk about it. So there's actually a few things that I am working on at the moment, one of which I do want to talk about in my next video, which I do have planned to release in the next few days. So yeah, those are some of the reasons why I took a little bit of extra time to myself before coming back to YouTube. Also because I knew that once I start making YouTube videos, my free time is pretty much gonna disappear. Anyways, as I said, I've got another video planned for release in the next few days, so I hope to see you in the next one. See you then.